Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Polygon Forest. I am Vin.
And I'm Chris.
Let's do this. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the many woes of Sony and what they've been up to, as well as we got some other little bits of good news as well, which we'll chip through at the beginning. But first, Chris, how's it going, man? What are you playing? And
Good.
is anything new?
Nothing new. Still Horizon Zero Dawn. Still cracking away through that. Still loving it. It's getting better and better the more I'm playing it. I think I've done pretty much most of the story arc now, so I kind of know what's what. And I'm just about to start on the DLC before I do the final boss.
Awesome.
I suspect if there's no final boss, I'll be really like, what?
Yeah, I remember finishing the game and being like, yes, that was a nice, satisfying, encompassing experience. Yeah, God, such a great game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious to get back through it actually, because I'm sort of debating if I want to go through Ghost of Tsushima right now or if I want to replay Horizon Zero Dawn. Like it's a bit
Yes.
of a
Do we
bit
know
of a
when
dilemma.
the new one's coming out yet?
They said 2021.
They just said 2021.
I think they were expecting it, and like last year when they announced it, I think they were expecting it to be the middle of the year. But I think that's going to be that big sort of holiday push. I think that's going to be their main line this year. So
yeah, well, we're going to talk about this coming up, but it'd be interesting to see if anything surfaces around E3 time.
Yeah, I believe so.
About that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's already been out on an E3, so it'd be strange for them to just not say anything.
Yeah. So, how many hours have you been putting into it? Have you been clocking it, or have you just been having a blast and just going through it without looking?
I've not been clocking it, but especially in today's age, time is not as precise as it was before. In that, I don't know how time works anymore. Like I was doing some of my game on the weekend, and like I just lost like 6 hours. I was just like, what happened? I was just doing some textures. I was like, I'll just tweak this texture. That's what I'll do for today. Cheeky hour, half hour. And then like 6 hours later, I'm like, oh, I better make some dinner then. So, and it's the same with games. So I have no idea, but the fact is I've really enjoyed it. And so that's why I don't know how long it's taken. Nothing's felt like a slog. So the pacing has been great. All those side missions and everything. So
that game just the thing that impressed me with that game is just how it scaled out as well. Like it never got like you never felt like you're doing the same thing over and over again. If that was either like the new places that you went to, or if it was new enemies that were introduced and stuff, or like the new arrowheads and stuff, like the different elements that you had. It's just constantly like refreshing itself, which was great. I remember having a good time with it though.
The scaling is the best. I think it's probably the best example of scaling in terms of the actual number of like ammunition and tactics and leveling up to achieve certain things. It's pretty well done. So yeah, that's all I've been playing. So that's kind of taken up all my time.
Hey man, that's a good game to get sucked into. So
yeah, I'm just going in all on that. What about you? What have you been playing?
At the moment, I'm playing. Just started playing Neo 2, which is sort of like a Souls-like game that's set in sort of it's like feudal Japan, based around the yokai and things like that. If anyone's ever played the first one, this is pretty much more of the same. Like it's actually kind of like disappointing in that respect, like how similar it is to the first one. Like I really don't think they changed it enough. There's little bits, but it's not. It's more of the same, basically. If you enjoyed Neo 1, you're gonna like this. That's the best way I can describe it. But if you're expecting like a complete revamp, then you're not going to get it. It's pretty much more. If it's better, I'm not sure yet. Like I'm not that far into it. But I'm enjoying it so far. It's hard as hell. Like it's probably harder than the first one. I think I'm getting absolutely churned out by all the enemies, and I think I've seen the "you have died" screen more times than I can count. So
yeah, what's the difficulty of playing on that?
There's only one difficulty.
Oh right, I see. Okay,
it's a Souls-like, so it's one of those guys.
So you can't cheat, as it were.
Yeah, quote unquote cheat. Get good, bro. Like it's one of those games. So
okay, and graphically similar then.
Very similar. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
same engine. Even like the pause menu and stuff. Like if you pause the game, it's the exact same as the first game.
Hmm.
Like it feels like a massive DLC basically. Which if you're into the game, then it's more of the same, which is good.
Yeah,
So
if you're
yeah,
after more of the same, yeah, there's just a market for that for sure.
yeah, for sure. But other than that, on the side, I'm still trying to finish off Assassin's Creed Valhalla. There will be a day when I see the credits of that game, but it is not this day.
I might come back to it if there's nothing. Yeah, that sounds really bad, doesn't it? If I've got
Yeah.
nothing else to play and I'm broke.
No, it's just them games are too long, man. Like it's I think I've got like 100 hours into that game, and I'm a sucker for them things like Horizon Zero Dawn as well. Did the same thing. As soon as the map opens up and I see more than one icon,
Yeah.
all right, okay, systematically, I have to go through them all. And when you get a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where it's just the map is filled with stuff, it's just like, yep, it's gonna take a while. So slowly chipping through all the counties, as it were. But it's nice because I haven't been back to England for like 9 years. So it's kind of like going home sometimes. And then other times it's like, England doesn't look anything like this. This is weird.
Yeah, those rock formations are nowhere near that far south. But
Right.
yeah, you have to go to like Scotland or whatever. But yeah, get the idea. Yeah, that's true. Actually,
it's good though.
It is beautiful. Like it's the best looking game I've played because I have got it on my PC. And so when I plug that into my old TV, it's pretty good. Although it does stutter sometimes. It does judder.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing it on Xbox Series X, so it's sort of like it's locked 60 for me. But I can understand on something like the PlayStation or the last gen consoles, I can imagine it'll chug a little bit.
I thought my PC was pretty good, but I just whack everything up on Ultra anyway. So, which is why I'm a natural like console gamer, because I can't stand knowing that there's features not available to me.
Yeah, I'm the same.
That annoys me.
That's a good point. Although Ubisoft aren't like the world aren't best known for their sort of optimization on PC ports, so I'll take that hit. Like I totally understand.
It's your fault, Vin. You should have drawn that. You should have drawn that better on
right. Yeah. If I'd drawn that picture a little bit better, the frame rate would have been a little bit higher.
Would not have stuttered. And what's with did you draw the birds that are just like triangles in the sky?
That was my fault. I apologize.
Like that.
Just yeah. I mean, at least they animated them, because I just did them still, which is
so they did right. They improved on your design, I guess.
Just a little.
Yeah, just adding the animation of that. Live and learn, Vin. Next time,
indeed,
do some shading.
That's next year's training, I'm sure. But moving on, we should shift up into the news. First, the good news. We'll get the good news out of the way.
Yes,
because I think this is actually a big deal.
I think so.
People will probably be skipping over this for the other news, which we'll get into in a little bit. But good news first, which is E3 is back, which is a huge thing for me. Like, I think this is huge. Yes. Free to watch digital version with no paywall, which is really important, because there was a lot of rumors flying around thinking how are the ESA going to sort of handle this, but no, it's going to be completely free, which is awesome for us. So the Entertainment Software Association, or the ESA, has officially unveiled its plans for a reimagined all virtual E3 2021, which will engage video game fans everywhere. With early commitments from Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, Take-Two, Warner Brothers, Koch Media. I can't remember. I know they're like a part of it. Koch. Is it Koch? Coke? Koch?
Yeah, Koch Media.
No, definitely Koch Media. I definitely said that out loud. Indeed. I mean, they exist, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and more are due to be announced as well for E3 2021, which will take place on June 12th through June 15th, which is very, very cool. Because last year, for me personally, like, I wasn't a huge fan of how everything was sort of spread out, because it was just a free-for-all because of the pandemic. Totally understand it. But everyone just started trying to get away from each other, and then it just lasted way too long, and I think it just diluted itself like way out of proportion. So
there wasn't as much of a buzz because you weren't excited, and the excitement wasn't ramped up from one thing to another, and it wasn't cumulative. Like,
right,
it was like a few sparklers every so often, wasn't it? It wasn't a spectacle.
Like, yeah, by the end I wasn't really like I wasn't really paying attention anymore, you know, like towards the end, like the last few sort of conferences, which like filtered down into like August, like it, because it went on for that long.
Mm.
I was just like, yeah, I'll watch the highlights or I'll just read the thing afterwards. Like I really don't care about this anymore. But yeah, how about you? Like, are you an E3 watcher? Do you like watch it every year, or are you one of those people that just read the articles afterwards, sort of thing?
I do a lot of reading afterwards. I'm one of those people where it's like, oh, I'll watch it this year. I'll watch it this year. And no one's just around just to say, oh, you know, it's on now.
Yeah,
And so I'm that guy that I just need a nudge and I would watch it, but I just never end up watching it
right. Never watch it live.
just because of me being not very good at being an adult. But I like watching the videos afterwards, and I like the trickle down afterwards. And I'll go back and watch E3 announcements and stuff after the fact throughout the year, even past ones of games that I've come to like later on. So therefore, I don't watch it live, but I'm a big supporter of it, and I like it, and I like watching the content, and I consume the content. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. I mean, I'm pretty religious about watching it every year. I'm one of those dorky guys that makes my own like timetable and stuff. I'm like, all right, like, and check the time differences, especially when we were living in Japan, because the time difference is like 12 hours behind or whatever.
Mm.
So you'd have to like take the day off the next day, which I used to do like a boss, take the day off the next day and then stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning and wait for these conferences to come around, like coffee in hand, half awake, like, yes, I will watch this. So yeah, I still do that to this day, even though the time difference now, because I live in Montreal, the time difference is nothing. Like it doesn't affect me anymore.
Yeah.
I still like to make my little schedules and stuff. So yeah.
Is it because it's California, isn't it? So is that different time to where you are?
Yeah. So it's I think it's 3 hour time difference, 3-4 from California. I'm not sure.
Wow, but it's
Don't
only
quote
like
me on that. I'm an idiot.
It's only 4 between UK and where you are.
Yeah, 4 and 5. It depends on if the daylight savings have twisted on Nintendo's, because I know your daylight savings. Most amazing conversation going on here right now, by the way, for all
great game content. Yeah,
indeed, the top shelf chef kiss perfectness. No, but like the time differences shifts at different times for different countries. So I think the UK goes like 2 weeks earlier,
right,
than what Canada does. Which was weird when we were living in Japan, because there was no daylight savings, like at all. Like you would just plow through and just ignore it, sort of thing. So that's what it is.
Fair enough. Well, they didn't, the reason why it was introduced, again, it's more top quality gaming content.
Indeed.
It's probably the reason why they don't use it, because I think it was something to do with the Second World War.
Yeah, something like that. Some crops, or I don't know.
Yeah, so the farmers and daylight and things.
Anyway, E3.
Back to E3. So you may or may not know something about E3, because Ubisoft are going to be showcasing.
Indeed, yeah, we're a part of the festive activities with E3
the festivities. So that's going to be really exciting to see you and be able to talk about it with you after the fact, because you can't talk about it live because you're going to be at work, aren't you?
You're right, and it never gets old. Like that aspect of E3, when you're stood in a room, or you're sat in a room, sorry, like they normally, like outside of like pandemic times, as it were, we would have halls set up where we normally have our meeting halls, because Ubisoft Montreal is huge. Like I think we're coming up to like 4,000 developers, which sounds like a lot of people, but then when because we have like two annual parties a year, like the Christmas party, which is only like half the people show up because half of them go home for Christmas for obvious reasons. But we also have a summer party as well. And when we have our summer party, because everyone's there, we have to actually rent out a hockey stadium just to accommodate them all.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous. And then we have like an E3, like a mini E3 in the summer, which isn't a part of E3 normally. Like it's normally like a few months after or whatever, or a few weeks after. But like we have massive screens set up, and they come out and they do like, it's like an E3 conference, and there's like almost 4,000 people there, and you're thinking, oh yeah, crap, like all of these guys are developers, are all working on this thing, which is super exciting. Like when you're actually watching E3 though, like we normally go into our separate teams and we all go into the meeting rooms and we put up a huge screen and just like collectively watching like the different teams get excited, every time like one of the games gets announced, because they've been working on this thing for a few years and they're psyched to see it, and they want to see the reactions from it. So
yeah, and they can talk about it with people and have conversations with it and get all the, I'm sure there must be a flood of like social media that comes through around that sort of time, and like, oh, this looks amazing, and that, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, you got like sometimes you obviously get the negative stuff as well, but that's a different discussion for a different day,
That's
I
such a
guess. But
great.
it's always interesting. It's always exciting.
So is it like, why aren't you playing it? Why aren't you making this game? This game looks terrible, or just
Yeah,
this game looks
sometimes you do go.
terrible, or
Yeah, I mean, you always get like a section of that, and it's funny because like my Google alerts sort of go haywire based on like what we spoke about last week as well. Like
Hmm.
every time a new Assassin's Creed gets announced, like, oh, it should be Assassin's Creed Japan, and then my feed gets filled up because there's just a lot of
Wow.
people complaining.
Okay,
Hilarious, but
and
yeah,
it's Vin's
they're
fault.
used to it. Right, it's all my fault. I planted the seed.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to it. There's been some names that have, yes, you've listed the names. There's the bit here that says notably Sony hasn't mentioned anything.
Indeed.
That's a bit alarming, and especially because Xbox have been quite vocal about how they're really happy that it's a positive time and everyone's coming together and working together, and then
Yeah, I mean,
Sony aren't
it's
mentioning
not
anything.
too crazy considering like Sony have skipped E3 now 2 years in a row.
Hmm.
Like last year wasn't too crazy because we understood like with the pandemic, people couldn't go to a physical E3 and that was cancelled. So everyone sort of did their own thing. But Sony were missing from E3 the year before that as well. Like they did their own thing. They sort of they're probably fashioning themselves to be the next sort of Nintendo. And they're just like going on their own way, which more power to them, I guess. But and I'm totally fine with Sony, and there's other people as well that are missing from this list as well. The omissions include E3, Activision, Activision Blizzard, as it's actually officially known,
Hmm.
Sega, Bandai. Wow, that's a word. Bandai Namco and Square Enix are also missing,
And EA, did you say EA?
and EA. Yeah,
Yeah.
so they all do their own things, which is absolutely fine. Like I'm totally cool. Like as a consumer anyway, like not as like a developer, like all looking at this as from the industry standpoint, sorry. But like as a consumer, I'm okay with them doing their separate thing. It's all about the timing for me. Like if Sony say no, we're not going to be a part of E3, more power to them. But if they say we're not going to be a part of E3, we're going to do our conference in August instead, then that's going to be like, oh, come on, like you got to keep this stuff tight together. Like if you can get in that window of like that 1 or 2 weeks of just like E3, like this is E3 time, like show all your stuff, let all the journalists get down there and figure all this stuff out and they can get all the press sorted out properly, then we're gold. But if it drags out beyond that, like we saw last year, I think it's going to be an issue again. I think there's going to be a lot of backlash from it as well.
It's a key year this year because of the new consoles. Because a lot of people don't have a new generation console. A lot of people are still weighing up their options and considering things. Xbox just needs to come along with a few eye-catching things, and Sony
I
just
think, yeah.
to be quiet for a few months. And a lot of money is going to go Xbox's way and not Sony's way if they don't act fast. I mean, however big an impact that is going to be, I don't know, but
Hmm.
it's certainly a factor this year. They should know. You know, I'd hope they're aware of that or crunch the numbers at least and gone, yeah, we're okay. But
I
I
think
still
you're
don't know.
right.
Still don't know what they're
Yeah,
doing.
I think you're right on that actually, because that has to be like in the back of their brains, especially with the other news that's happening around Sony right now as well, which we'll get into in a minute. But like everything that's happening, it's just adding pressure on top of Sony saying, yo, if you don't get in this boat with the rest of the industry, you're gonna sink by yourself, basically. And I think it's a valid point. I mean, as big as these games that they've got, like as much as like a household name that Sony's become right now, yeah, it's going to be tough to see like how they fare by themselves in that respect. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. I mean, hopefully they do get on board. Like I say, on board. I don't mean on board with E3. It would be nice if they did rejoin E3.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong. That'd be the ultimate for me personally as a consumer. But if they at least stay within the window of like June, then I think that would be a good thing for everyone involved with E3. Because I know EA normally goes pretty close to where E3 is. Like they normally go at the same time, and where even before the pandemic, they had their event set up, so it was actually really close to the E3 convention center. So all the journalists could go to E3 and then go to their separate like EA little thing that they've got like in a car park somewhere, which is
It's
normally pretty
considerate.
close by.
Yeah.
Right. So they're actually saying, yeah, we're not officially a part of E3 because the ESA, how it used to be, and the reason why they've gained so much criticism over the last few years is there's a lot of money that goes into the ESA's pocket from these publishers just to like show a conference, which really they're doing them a favor And the fact that they're paying that money, it's sort of insane to me. Well, it was, but
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, if they, as long as they can just keep it within the same sort of window of time, then I think everyone will be happy, no matter what happens or who is officially with E3 or not, or the ESA, as it were.
Yeah, and it's important for a lot of reasons, that probably more reasons than we can probably think of at the moment, why
Mm.
having people, publishers, and hardware manufacturers showing stuff around the same sort of time is good for the industry. It's good for the industry. It's good for the consumers. It's good for everyone, really. There's lots of benefits for everything to come out at the same time. If everything gets eked out, then then it's always there's always people that will lose out. But not that I can articulate how that'll happen. But it just feels
Mm.
like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the thing that you're trying to get to, I guess, is when you have all the publishers together, you sort of you get into this mindset when you're watching E3 anyway, as a consumer, like I do. Like I will watch stuff that I'm not really that interested in anyway. It's because
Mm,
I'm just in the flow of like the market and sort of E3. Like, oh, there's another conference today, so I'm just going to watch it. I don't even care what it is. Like I'll watch EA conferences, even though the only thing I really care about from EA at the moment is Battlefield. Like that's
mm,
really the only game that I really play from them. Even though half their conference is just inevitably sports games. Don't care about sports games,
mm.
but I will sit there and I will watch people kick a football around for half an hour like an idiot, But because like
Because you're
I'm getting
invested in the
exposed to
event.
stuff that
Yeah,
they wouldn't normally reach. Because I wouldn't go and like look for that stuff anyway by myself.
yeah,
So like the fact that they've got that power as a sort of community as E3 to say, okay, we're going to make everyone put eyes on stuff that they wouldn't normally be interested in, but they might find something that they really like when
yeah.
they see this sort of stuff. Because you'll watch these conferences that you weren't interested in whatsoever. Inevitably, you'll see something in one of the conferences where you're just like, that looks really
That looks
interesting.
really
I want
good.
to check that out.
Yeah,
And that's why we watch it.
yeah.
So like the closer that they are together, the more opportunity there is for that sort of thing to happen.
Yeah,
And
100%. That's really
yeah,
well put. Because there's lots of things, especially with the indie stuff, where you go in with an open mind, or you might have heard about something that looks good, and then you get turned on to something else that just came out from left field. And
indie games are the best sort of example that you can give with E3 and why it's so good is
mm,
because indie games just do not get enough sort of exposure because they normally get coupled in with massive montages, right? That's normally what happens. And it's just here's our indie montage, and it's like 20 games go by in 30 seconds
mm,
of just like quick shots of like just random like top-down shooters or whatever. And you're like, yeah, indie games, quote unquote.
yeah.
That's
What are you
all I
gonna do?
saw, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And like if they'd never give like any time for them really, but E3 does have a little bit more breadth for them sort of things, which is important for indie games anyway that need the exposure.
yeah. And healthy for the industry as a whole, then, because we need the little guys as well as the big AAA
Mm.
guys, especially with how things are at the moment, which we'll
Indeed. Indeed.
come on
Yeah,
to.
we should probably move off onto this, which is
Yes,
the big
probably
news
should.
story. The big news story of the week, which if you haven't heard about this,
Where
then
have you been?
where the hell have you been? Like I want to go where you are. But yeah, Sony has had some stumbles this week, which are kind of big news. The biggest news, as it were. According to Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, who has broke a
Again.
story again. God, like that guy, like every week, man. Like, give us a break, Like, stop
we
making the
got
industry look terrible.
we got stuff we want to talk about on this
Right.
podcast. You keep
we
giving
got
us.
nice stuff,
Yeah.
like our favorite games or our favorite JRPGs of all time. They would be nice topics, but no. Jason Schreier comes along and destroys dreams, as it were. So, according to Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, Sony is sort of reorganizing all of their studios at the moment, which has come to the criticism of pretty much every gamer, every developer, and all their dogs combined, and all kind of like that's what it feels like at least. But the short of it is that Sony is reducing its footprint in the less profitable slash double A studio slash experimental studio in favor for bigger sort of big blockbuster games, which we're sort of used to, like your Uncharted, your God of Wars, and obviously The Last of Us, things like that. This also includes giving the axe to some games based just on sales expectations, or if it's not done so well for like how it's sat on Metacritic right now, things like that. They're giving the axe to them sort of games because they want to give more resources to the bigger games, such as The Last of Us. And as a result of this, the main reason why the story sort of broke is that Days Gone is not getting a sequel. It did not get greenlit by Sony.
And studio, yeah.
Poor studio. They were pretty much reduced back down to what we in industry call a co-dev studio, which is sort of, they're not a main studio. They're just there to sort of help another studio. So what happened after the Days Gone the Days Gone sequel was axed, then they were told to go and work on The Last of Us Part 2 of Naughty Dog to help finish that off. And then they were just whittled down to that. And that's sort of why we've seen high profile departures from Ben's studio, the people that make Days Gone. One of the directors, the main writer, left, and probably countless others, which we don't know about because we don't hear about them because they're smaller devs or they're just seniors or leadership. Like we only ever hear about the big guys that leave, which if they've left, then there's definitely some lower downs as well.
Yes, and that's bad because now they were working on The Last of Us, which explains why The Last of Us 2 came out on time, and because there was other people working on it, so they got another studio to work on it. But also now because they're now working on their own thing, aren't they? So they're working on something original.
Indeed.
Because the Days Gone 2 pitch didn't land.
Right.
Well, I mean, as far as I can tell, this is just down to critics because it was profitable.
Yeah, this is the strange thing about it.
And you don't want a second one.
It's very odd because the game, like, I think it's at like 71 or something on Metacritic right now. And if you read them reviews, like they all pretty much say the same thing. Like this game has got a lot of potential. It's enjoyable. It does have its problems. They're going to iron this stuff out in the sequel, and it's going to be awesome. That's pretty much what and when I played the game, like when I finished it, when I put the controller down, I was like, yep, absolutely. Like the sequel to this game is going to be amazing. Like if this is what they did on the first round, like I can't even imagine what they would be able to do with Days Gone 2. And like that was just what I assumed. I thought, that's the right course of things. Like Days Gone 2 is going to be amazing, and then Days Gone 3 is going to be even better. Like you look at The Witcher. Like The Witcher 1 is, in my opinion, garbage.
Clunky
like it's hard to play. Like I tried to play it a few years ago. Tried to play it on PC, couldn't do it. Tried to play it on the Steam controller, got a bit further through it. Still a really terrible game. And if it was up to Sony, that The Witcher 3 wouldn't have come around. Just based on that sort of mindset. And there's just countless cases of this.
Well, Uncharted.
It's a great
Uncharted started with 2, and that was kind of clunky and difficult to navigate at times. Like it wasn't fluid experience. It was still great, but that was the second one. I still haven't played the first one, but I'm guessing it's going to be even more clunky and a little bit more difficult to figure out where to go.
Sure.
Less refined, should we say?
Yeah, so it's very bizarre because, like you said,
strange.
it made the profits, it hit the numbers, and they were ready to go for a sequel. And then Sony just said, no, we're not doing it. We only want big blockbuster games. We only want games that are getting 9 and 10s, and we want to put one of these things out a year, and Days Gone 2 is not going to be one of them. And that was the decision that was made.
Yeah, so then some head people left, and now because of that, it seems now they're working on something original. So they've just shot themselves in the foot because they've lost the head people. That's not going to be good for a dynamic of a studio. They're not going to feel motivated or enthusiastic about this and how this has happened, are they?
You've hit the nail on the head on this. And like from a developer's point of view, this was the part which I focused on, the whole sort of Jason Schreier article, which you should go and check out, please, Bloomberg, if you're listening to this. But that was this part specifically. There's a lot of people that are defending the actions by Sony by saying, well, it's all good and well because like even though they're not getting a Days Gone sequel, they've already got their new IP and they're working on their own project again. So all is fixed, all is well, nothing to see here. I 1000% disagree with this. This is the time that was between the end of Days Gone and now, because it's in the article, it was reported that the new IP that they're working on was only just started this month or within the past month at least. So from the end of Days Gone, which was 2018, I think it came out. So for the last 2 years, they've just solely been probably working on Last of Us content. Like from The Last of Us 2, there's the rumor of the multiplayer game that's coming out. Don't know if it's going to be standalone or if it's going to be a part of a sort of Last of Us Part 2 remaster. package that's going to be on the PS5, which is inevitably going to come at one point or another.
Mm.
So they've been working on this sort of stuff. So what that means from a sort of studio politics point of view, they've gone from being a headline studio to being demoted back down to a co-dev studio, which
Yeah.
is basically just stripping them of power and motivation, and any momentum that they had to be like a headline studio was
Yeah.
basically stripped away. And it's evident of that. Like as soon as I read the articles that the one of the directors and the writer left, I think that was in December that happened. I can't remember his name. Jeff
Yeah.
Ross, I think it is. When they left, then that was like, okay, something's up. Like this isn't normal. Like if you look at this from a developer point of view, and getting stripped from being a headline studio to becoming a co-dev studio,
Yeah.
it just basically removes all that motivation.
The keyword is supervise. So Naughty Dog are going to be supervising this studio. So that to me says they've got no creative input, and it's just it's just more bums on seats doing whatever Naughty Dog says. That's how I read that.
Which is dangerous in and of itself, because like while Naughty Dog put out 10 out of 10 games, I get that.
Yeah.
But in regards to how they make their 10 out of 10 games, it is not the benchmark to how you should do it. Like they have a lot of internal issues, which I've heard about even being at a third party myself. Like you hear these rumors all the time, like about how awful the conditions are working there. Not like, I'm sure they get compensated well enough and all that sort of good stuff, but in terms of just pure man hours being there, there's a lot of crunch. Their turnover is really high. They lose about a third of their development studio after every game that they ship.
Huge. Can you imagine that in any other industry where you've released a product and then a third of the staff leave and they've got to hire another third of the staff? That's just that's not good business sense at all, because
it's really not.
You got to keep the good people. You got to hold on to good people. And if you're
like
not holding on to good people, you're doing something wrong.
One of my favorite concept artists, who was a concept artist at Naughty Dog, he got promoted up to become art director on The Last of Us Part 2. He left. He went to Insomniac.
Right.
Everyone got their bonus a couple of months ago, and they up and left.
Yeah.
Not everyone, obviously. Like I'm over exaggerating, of course, but a substantial amount of people have left. But the problem with that is that people are leaving, but then there's people at the at Ben's studio and other teams as well, which we'll get into in a minute, that have to basically help out on that slack that has been created by Naughty Dog, because their environment isn't that great. People are leaving or whatever, and people are going to come in and fill them seats.
Yeah.
And so, now teams that should have had their own games aren't having their own games. And now because Naughty Dog can't get their shit together, basically, there's other games which we're not going to get, which is crazy to me. It's just bad business.
Yeah. So they've got a 10 out of 10 game with The Last of Us 2, well received, critically acclaimed, but they had to pull the resources of two other studios. So was it the Sony Visual Arts Service Group, which is like a support studio, and Ben Studio, which are trying to do their own thing and at least have some sort of creative autonomy, which that has been stripped away from them. And Sony Visual Arts Service Group have been brought in to sort of fill the gap as well, so that The Last of Us 2 could come out. The game's come out, mixed reviews. Be interesting to find out if any of that controversy was a direct result because of how many different studios had to weigh in to get it out within a certain time frame that Sony was happy with. Yeah,
I mean, it's like having multiple studios on one game isn't that uncommon. I mean, Ubisoft is comical
for this, isn't it?
Yeah. Like every Assassin's Creed game, we have like 1,000 people working on it, which is a lot of people, but each studio is only like 200 to 300 people each. So split over a load of different studios around the world, the game is pretty much getting worked on 24/7, which is fine. But the whole purpose of a co-dev studio is that you're supposed to build them up so they can eventually, now you can run off by yourself, and they leave the nest, as it were, and they make their own games. Then they build up to become like making their own content, and then they can make their own co-dev studio. So it just grows and grows and grows. More games, more profit, all good. Everyone's happy. The problem with this is that it's gone in reverse. The fact that Sony have created, with the visual art studio as well, or the visual art team, they were planned to become a studio, and they were told like, hey, we're gonna build you up so you can be your own studio, and we're going to give you this project so you can do it, or you can pitch as a project so you can do it. And now they've sort of been devolved back into what they were. And the Days Gone team are like that as well. So the whole Bend studio has basically gone from headlining a game, like, yeah, finally you've hit pasture, and then they dragged you back into the woods sort of thing, which is just crazy to me because they were on the right track. That's the thing that's insane about this. It's not that if Days Gone was like absolutely tanked, like it was 6 out of 10s, and it was just everyone was saying, yeah, there's not really any hope for this game. Like it's done. There's nothing really special about it. It's boring or whatever. They were saying all these things. I would totally understand. From a business standpoint, I'm sure this looks good on paper. But going forward, like the goal here is to make a team that can sort of fend for themselves, as it were. And they were there, you know, like they made it. They made it out there to actually make this project, and they were just pulled back for studio politics reasons and because it looks good on paper.
If I was an investor,
it doesn't.
This is the thing. If I was an investor and I got some money, got a choice. You can either invest in Days Gone 2, or you can invest in this unknown IP that they're now working on, which and the circumstances of which that has came to be after they pushed back and said, we don't want to do this, we want to do something else. And after all the people walked out, you're going to want to invest in Days Gone 2 100% of the time, every day of the week. You wouldn't want to invest in the latter. Unknown IP with people walking out and have to ask to do their own game. That's just, to me, doesn't make much business sense how this happened. It seems
and I mean, by removing that sort of momentum that they had after the back of Days Gone, you're basically resetting the studio back to zero. So they're basically learning how to rebuild themselves to become a head studio again. As far as we can gather anyway, because they've had these high-level departures. Right.
So how much of that is going to happen now?
Yeah, it's tough, man. Like
they shouldn't be putting all their eggs in the Last of Us basket.
I think so. I mean, at the same time, like I see the direction that they were going for. Like on paper, like make more Last of Us games because they get 10 out of 10s. And they sell 12 million units copy. I get it. Like I totally understand that from the perspective of how it looks on paper and making the business choices. But I would argue that this is just a bad business choice because you've now removed potentially growth from two studios. Like the Sony Visual Arts Studio and Sony Bend have now devolved back into being co-dev studios, or they're trying to rebuild back up to being head studios. For all I know, in a few years' time, Bend Studio comes out with this new IP. It's even better than Days Gone. All of this is behind us. That'd be awesome if that happened. But like knowing how co-dev studios are sort of treated, and like I understand the sort of mindset behind being a co-dev studio, like having to like if I was at Ubisoft in Montreal and we just suddenly like, okay, the whole studio is going to be a co-dev studio now, that would be a massive shock to everyone. They would just be like, we don't know how to do this. Like, we don't know how to take orders from other people. Like, we've been doing our own thing for so long, and we've had this creative power, and we put our own thing, and I think we earned our stripes. And now you're telling us that we're not allowed to do it. Yeah, I'm going to quit. I'm done. Like, why would I stay here? You know, and a lot of people have probably done that and left. So it's really tough situation for them guys. I don't even know. I don't even know what I would do if I was in that situation. But yeah, it's got to be rough, man.
It is rough, especially as it wasn't Sony Visual Arts Service Group. They were the ones that were doing The Last of Us 1 remake.
Yes,
so
that's correct.
The only thing really that they would have creative input into is to how to get it onto the new gen console. So like, you know, lighting, if you're going to brush up on the game mechanics, bring it in line with The Last of Us 2. Again, you're bringing something in line with something that already exists. You could do maybe some interesting lighting and color grading and textures. So creatively, there's, for us, we'd think, yes, that's quite a lot to get your teeth stuck into, and you can make an impact on that and it can be proud of. You can be proud of that, but that they couldn't even do that themselves, like by themselves. They weren't funded. I read that they weren't funded very well for it.
They didn't get any funding. This is the crazy thing about it. Like they were basically at first they suggested, hey, can we work on an Uncharted 1 remake? Which that game came out in 2007 or something. So it was like, yeah, that'd be a good idea, actually. I think from a consumer's point of view, game probably does need a good remake. I think
I would, because I was trying to find.
I would buy that game.
I was trying to find Uncharted 1. I couldn't find it on the PlayStation thing, so I ended up starting with 2. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean that sounds like a good idea, but Sony turned around and told Visual Arts Group that no, that's too much work. It would take too much time. You'd have to do a load of redesign because there's a lot of questionable sort of design elements in that game.
Mm.
It's like you've got Uncharted 4 right there. Just make Uncharted 1 and the Uncharted 4 engine. I don't get it. But like they basically pulled it and said, no, it's too much work. So they said,
Mm.
okay, what if we make a remake of The Last of Us, which only came out in 2013,
Mm.
which is
And it's
a
already had a
little bit weird.
remake. It's already had a remake with the
Well,
PlayStation
remaster. It's had a
remaster. Sorry.
remaster on. Yeah. It's had a, just recently. I mean, I got the platinum on that game 2 years ago. Totally holds up. Absolutely fine. Does not need a
Yeah.
remake.
When you
in
look
my
at the
opinion.
screenshots side by side, it holds up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just insane to me. I mean, does the whole sort of Last of Us remake thing feel like a cash grab to you? That's the only question which I really have, because I know they've got the HBO series coming out soon. Is this a good idea? Do you think it's just a lot of people reacting negatively, coupled with the news that is happening with Sony Bend right now? Or do you think like a few years down the line, there's going to be a lot of fans be like, yeah, I'll buy it. Actually, is it bad business in that respect?
I don't know. I'm in two minds. Part of me thinks like this is how the sausage gets made, where
Mm,
you have to start making remakes of games because it takes years. It takes years to make them, and in a few years' time, there's probably going to be a bigger appetite for it because the show would have been out, and The Last of Us 2 would be, a couple of years old. So therefore, and we would have been in a situation where there'd be some new PlayStation 5 games out that are looking next gen because the generation in a few years' time is going to be probably get going. Then when you can create some amazing visuals that are better than what we're able to do now, it might be more of a viable situation. So that's one side of the story. And the other side of the story is we've only just had The Last of Us 2. We don't need a Last of Us 1 remake.
yeah.
That's kind of like, and then you see all the YouTube, the Twitter people that are like, it's way too early, but also I'd be the first person buying that.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, people
It's
don't
like
vote
had
with their wallets.
confirmation, like the
Yeah.
amount of people that have said they're going to buy it and they don't like it. It's not good. It's not good because the studios are just going to be like, well, everyone is saying that they're going to buy it.
Mm.
No one's saying they're going to like it, but everyone's saying they're going to buy it. And it gets to the point, it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we here? Is this just a money thing where people are going to go with what they know is going to get bought, or are they going to start taking risks and create new IPs and create more art? Because to me, The Last of Us, and it's such a shame that it's because it's The Last of Us, because when that came out, there was nothing else like it. It was
I agree.
so unique in so many different ways, mainly around the story and how the story unfolded and how the story played out. But it was at the time, again, it was like the perfect game.
Mm.
And The Last of Us 2, lots of aspects of that game are the perfect game. And it's just such a shame that they want to just do that again. So in a few years' time, that's not like the original. You imagine the people that made that at the time, they're like, what they would be going through creatively, trying to create something new team working together to create this thing that never been seen or happened before. But they just want to do it again and again and again.
I agree. I mean, it's one of those things like, yeah, it makes sense on paper. Like, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
I can see like the appeal of in a couple of years' time when they're getting ready to make The Last of Us season 2. Like, Last of Us season 1 has just done really well on HBO, and they're re-releasing like the remaster of The Last of Us Part 2 with factions, maps, DLC, and they've got the remake of uh, The Last of Us Part 1 all sort of packaged together,
And there'll be
getting
a
ready for season 2 to go in. Like, they've got all
Pedro
these new, right.
Pedro
I
Pascal
mean,
skin on the
right.
Last of Us
I
one.
mean, yeah, that's another part of the question, isn't it? But like all that on paper, it sounds great. Like, I mean, it makes total sense, like in terms of like money and like how the sort of shareholders are going to be looking at that sort of stuff. And
Hmm.
the stockholders just gonna be like, yeah, this is a great idea. You should do that. More Last of Us, sell that. Gets 10 out of 10s across the board. Everyone buys it. Everyone loves it.
Hmm.
I get that side of it, but at the same time, it's just gross. Like the whole thing is just so gross.
Yeah.
Like, it's too early. And it's like you just said, are they going to reskin Ellie and Joel? Because if they do, there's going to be riots. I mean, actual, like, people are going to be really annoyed about that. Like, considering like how they reacted off the back of Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. People freaked out about that. about
Yeah.
getting a reskin of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And
And it was a long time. It
yeah,
didn't go away. It wasn't just one news cycle.
and that's Peter Parker, right? And
Yeah.
that's when people are used to watching movies, and like every other Spider-Man movie, the actor changes. So they're sort of used to this
Hmm.
already for Peter Parker. But with Joel and Ellie being such iconic characters that they are, if you mess with that, like yeah, they've got a storm coming their way. That's all I can say. Like, and if they're not prepared for that, then yeah, they need to get used to the idea that they're going to get some hate.
Well, the other thing that I'm worried about is if there's this silent majority of people that bought the second Last of Us game but
Mm,
didn't like it, but don't want to say anything because of the armies of fan people that really loved The Last of Us 2.
that's fair. Yeah.
It might hit their wallet and they might not be prepared for it because they got such a vocal, supportive community, but they might not get the mega bucks that they think they're going to get
I mean, that
next
would
time
be
out.
the best case scenario, in my opinion. Not to say like, oh, Sony shouldn't get any money; they don't deserve it, and like that. Like that, because of this story, I don't think we should vote our wallets yet. We should
Mm,
obviously wait for a review, see what the game is like. If it's a significant update, like it might be worth it, and all that sort of stuff. Don't know yet. Not
mm,
gonna not gonna deny any of that.
yeah.
However, if it does pan out that way, and there are a lot of grievances and there is a lot of problems,
Mm,
then I would hope that people would be like, yeah, not buying that.
mm.
Like I'm certainly not interested whatsoever. And The Last of Us is in my top 10 games of all time.
Same,
One of
yeah.
my favorite games. Like, love it to death. Um, didn't like The Last of Us Part 2, but that's a different story altogether. But
It's not what this story is about.
right, Last of Us Part 1 specifically is
Yeah.
it's absolutely great the way it is. Does
Mm,
not need changing.
yeah.
So the
At the
fact that they're even
moment.
messing with this is sort of like I'm sort of hesitant to even look at it.
Mm,
So when it comes out, I'm really not interested in it. Like you will have to like seriously convince me to pick this thing up,
yeah.
and on day one anyway. Like if this game is if this game is full price on day one, I won't be picking it up. That is for sure.
There's no way. There's no way I'm paying $70 for it. No
No way.
way. It's going to
Just
have to
can't.
be a bundle with a new thing,
Yeah, I
if I'm
mean,
ever going to touch
and
it.
I think this is where it comes in when it comes to if you've got The Last of Us Part One remake, Last of Us Part Two remaster, and the factions like standalone game, whatever they're working on right now. If that was all bundled into one, and that was like $70 or something, then yeah, I can see the appeal of that.
Mm,
But like, how much of a cash grab is this thing going to be? Because we've only just the only thing that we know at this point is that it's being made.
mm,
And after Visual Arts Studio were taken off the project, then Naughty Dog sort of came in and took back over it themselves. So now Visual Arts aren't working on it. Well, they are working on it probably in some capacity, but they're not leading the charge anymore,
yeah.
which is an absolute shame because Visual Arts were trying to become their own studio,
Yeah.
and Sony have sort of axed that and nixed it, and now they're just become a co-dev team once again, which is again adds to a massive shame for this whole sort of story that's going on right now.
Yeah. They've got a lot to. They've got a lot of responsibility now, especially with their reputation of the. I don't know what the right turn of phrase is, but the conditions under what people were working. The fact now that they've got another team to look after, and there's going to be years of news reports if it gets worse.
Mm.
Yeah, there's that to think about as well, because there's only so much consumers going to take before they start voting with their wallets. If people are, if there's if lots of people keep leaving all the time, that's that sounds like it's systemic of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, the weird thing is about Naughty Dog, even though they have a massive turnaround, and they crunch people to hell, and the conditions are terrible, and all this sort of stuff. Like all of this sort of stuff happens, but somehow, and I don't know how. I'm guessing it's down to sheer luck more than anything. Is that at the other end of all these cycles, they still bang out games that are 10 out of 10,
Mm.
which like at what cost, I'm not sure, but
Are they blood diamonds is the thing, I suppose.
yeah, I mean, because all this takes, and I mean, this will happen, and the day will come when Naughty Dog put out a game that only hits 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
And when that day comes, gamers will smell blood and they will cut these people down like any other company that they cut down.
Yeah.
Like I've been in this
Well,
position myself, like working at Ubisoft. We've seen this thing happen over and over and over again.
and we
Like
know it can happen with Cyberpunk. Like that
Perfect
no
example.
one thought that
Yep.
was gonna, like, no one thought that was gonna happen. That came out completely left field to the consumer. In any case, like, I was shocked. Like, I was shocked that it wasn't as good as The Witcher, like, 2,
Mm.
in terms of how good it was. And in terms of, like, bugs and stuff, everyone was expecting it to be buggy, but that was, that's terrible. And it
Yeah.
still is terrible, and it's taking a long time. And they're a big, huge player, CD Projekt Red.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at the sort of what you call it, the image that CD Projekt had. What gamers had, like, sort of like their perception of CD Projekt Red was consumer friendly company.
Mhm.
Like, didn't put a game out until it was quote unquote ready.
Mm.
All this sort of stuff, like the fact that half of Studio Projekt Red is development studio for Cyberpunk and The Witcher. The other half of it is actually Good Old Games, or GOG as we know it, which is the storefront, which is no DRM, um, super consumer friendly, all that sort of stuff. Constantly have sales. So CD Projekt Red were literally, they were flying on clouds, like, in terms of how well they were doing.
Upward
And then
trajectory. Their games were getting better as time was going
right,
on, which is the major thing.
and like everything that we saw about CD Projekt Cyberpunk 2077, everything that we saw was just like, yeah, this is probably going to be
Mm.
the next step up from The Witcher 3.
Mm.
And just everyone was on that train to ride it. And the sales show that. The fact that that game sold 10 million units in its first, like, month is just insane.
Yeah.
Like, we don't see them numbers out of any other sort of RPG ever. Not really. Like, Skyrim sold 10 million in its first year, you know? So the fact that Cyberpunk got that in less than a month is kind of crazy.
Yeah. And
So
what's the reputation that both those games have got now, regardless of the
exactly.
sales early on?
Right.
If Naughty Dog pull a CD Projekt Red, which is completely possible because we know it can
Mhm.
happen to the biggest studios, it's that's going to be huge, absolutely huge, especially because they've consolidated. They're putting all their eggs in one basket, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, with the high level departures which they have, like I just mentioned, the art director from The Last of Us Part Two just quit.
Hmm.
He's left for another studio. That's just the art director. What if, like, the high level game designers start leaving and then they can't produce these games to the same standard, or if one of the teams just fails or doesn't do quite as well and the game, like, fails in one aspect? That's all it takes, man. Like, one
Yeah,
game gets 7 out of 10, they will hack these people down like nobody's business on Twitter, and that's all it takes, because
yeah.
then this house of cards will come crumbling. And when it does, yeah, there will be a reckoning for this sort of stuff. The only reason why Naughty Dog do so well is because they've been talented enough and secure enough by Sony to constantly bang out these blockbusters. But there will be a day when one of them doesn't hit, and when it does,
Hmm.
it's not going to be good.
You could argue that some of the cracks are already starting to show with some of the story elements of The Last of Us 2.
Yeah, that's fair.
There was a lot of people that had a lot to say about the story elements of The Last of Us 2, and it didn't resonate with both of us.
Yep.
It would be a shame if, again, like we said before, if that's to do with how things have gone down with Sony, that sounds like it's possible that it could be going in that direction. And I, for one, I'm not going to be buying anything else Naughty Dog until I've really had a good look at it. Like, I'll be watching some gameplay. I'll be waiting until there's people that have played the game and then give their reactions.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I mean,
yeah.
after I played The Last of Us Part Two, I was all in on Naughty Dog, like, absolutely everything. Like,
Mm.
everything that they've made since Uncharted One has just been gold dust to me. Like, everything that they did.
Yeah.
Like, I
Same.
played Uncharted 1, 2, 3, Lost Legacy, loved them all. Uncharted 4, Last of Us Part 1. I was on board for Last of Us Part 2. I was super excited about it. And after playing it, it was kind of like, yeah, the cracks are showing now for me personally. But I know, like, that's not across the whole zeitgeist of the gaming community sort of thing. Like, it's still very split between hardcore, like, diehard Last of Us Part 2 fans and people that didn't really enjoy it. And the people that didn't really enjoy it, I'm really curious to see how the sales of their factions multiplayer game does, sorry, or, like, the next, if part 3 comes out, like, how is that going to do? You know,
Well, if
there's
there's,
a lot
yeah,
of people have been burnt by this story, like you just said. And
yeah.
yeah, you're
Well,
right, cracks are showing.
there's been no announcement of DLC yet, which for the timeline is unusual. There should have been
Yeah,
some sort of announcement by now, if there was going to be one.
I get a feeling that, and this is just like tinfoil hat on, like, high projection sort of thing, but if I would be amazed if a lot of the focus of Sony's E3 press conference wasn't on The Last of Us. which is strange because The Last of Us Part 2 just came out last year. But I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get like some costume reveals of the HBO show for one, if that happens, and then they were probably going to announce the remake for The Last of Us Part 1 as well as the factions stuff, and then there was probably going to be a DLC, like a story DLC for The Last of Us as well, following another side character or something.
Yeah.
Which totally, like I said, like we normally hear about this sort of stuff. So the fact that they haven't said anything tells me that they've got a lot more to show than we actually think.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then that's going to be interesting. You know, after the back of all this bad news around The Last of Us, like this is the worst way that they could have announced, or like for the news to get out that Last of Us Part 1 remake was in the works, was through this sort of story.
That is
so how are they going to handle that?
There is no other way you can announce a remake. Worse, is there?
No,
that's
you're right.
Like the exact worst way to announce it. It's usually just good news because it's just nostalgia and oh yeah, show me that I like. There's my money. I want it now, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there was that element to it, but everyone was upset about how it happened. Even the people that are diehard fans, like, I will buy it straight away, but it sucks how this came out. It's kind of like what the headline is.
I guess like that's what all of this sort of boils down to, right? Like the Sony that we sort of fell in love with last generation, that were like riding high, is kind of feeling like a bit of arrogance is slipping in to the conversation now, and they're letting the money speak for itself, which, you know, more power to them in terms of a business standpoint. Like, I totally understand it, but now they're sort of getting in the way of themselves. They're not letting games nurture anymore. And to go along with this story, like obviously a few months ago we heard rumors, again reported by Bloomberg, that a lot of Sony Studios Japan was closing down, and that's sort of confirmed now. Like all but one of these studios has been closed down in Japan by the Sony sort of development branch, and the only people that are making games are the people that make Astro Boy. So they're the only studio that survived the cuts, as it were.
Wasn't it the studio that did Knack that they've closed down?
Yeah.
And that's a real shame, because we need studios that push the boundaries on the technical aspects of the game, of the hardware, because Knack was one of those first games that came out on the PlayStation 4, was it?
Yep. So it's a PlayStation 4 launch title.
Yeah. And we need those games. We need developers, even if they don't sell, it's important for manufacturers to invest in those studios, to make the games, to create the technology, to drive forward the industry. You just need to make a loss sometimes on the technology. They make a loss producing the consoles, supposedly, or however it works. You know, this is not a foreign concept to them. It just, again, seems like a lot of decision making. I can't get my head into how they're coming up to those answers.
It hurts as a PlayStation fan, you know. Like, I mean, I've got a PlayStation 5, I've got an Xbox Series X, I've got a Switch, but this one stings because I was mainly a PlayStation 4 gamer last generation, which I was all in on all of that sort of stuff. But standing back from this, I mean, my favorite game of all time is a game called Eco, which was on the PS2, which was made by Studio Japan. That team is gone now. It's dead. Like, everyone that was working on it, like they shifted off.
It's dead.
Well, not dead, but you know, the studio is dead.
Okay.
A horrible accident happened in Japan. Like this got off the rails. But no, I mean, that studio isn't around anymore because of like moves like this. Like they branched off and become their own studio called Gen Design. That's what they're called, which is the Team Eco studio. But after The Last Guardian, they disbanded. Well, during The Last Guardian, actually. But games like like Gravity Rush is another game gone. Like, that developer has just been axed recently, and it's these sort of games matter, you know, because they can. It's like Schreier says in the article itself, like and rightfully so, he points out that a lot of these smaller games often become bigger without them even trying. Like they just naturally fall upon other projects. And by doing this and only allowing these big blockbuster games to exist, like God of War, like Last of Us, and what you're going to do every time one of them gets a 7 out of 10, you just got to axe that studio and be like, yeah, you're a co-dev studio, you're helping the other one that hasn't done a 7 out of 10 yet. You're just going to keep doing that.
You can't keep doing that because, like you say, eventually The Last of Us is going to get a 7 out of 10. And then what are they going to do? Axe themselves?
Right. because they're the main Sony sort of
they're the main
template.
bags. Yeah,
Like they're the ones that everyone do what Last of Us is doing, but don't do what what Naughty Dog are doing, because they actually aren't treating their developers that well, and like they're struggling getting this stuff out the door, and when they do, like they need the help of everyone else to do it. And it's just like this weird sort of double standard. And the absolute like the thing that gets to me about this story more than anything, sorry about the tangent, but the thing that gets to me like more than anything about this story is the now head of Sony Worldwide Studios is the guy that used to run Guerrilla Games. And for him to turn around and say, no, Days Gone does not get a sequel because the first one didn't do too well, the absolute hypocrisy of that like grinds me to no end, because he was ahead of the effort to make Killzone 1, 2, and 3. 3 very average games, if you ask me, and weren't hugely well received, but they were given chance after chance after chance to finally get to the point where they make Horizon Zero Dawn, which is an absolute banger of a game, deserves everything that it gets in terms of like praise.
Yeah,
they had all them chances to get to that point, and now that he's in charge, he's not allowing that to happen for a company like Ben Studios, and they're not allowed to get to Horizon Zero Dawn moment anymore, because he just decided like, no, it's not worth the money, which is just insane to me. Like it's just crazy. It just doesn't make any sense.
I'm not sure about the actual what the critic scores were for the Killzone games, but yeah, they were critically lukewarm, I'd say. They weren't slated, but that's exactly the same as Days Gone. It wasn't slated. So yeah, it's really hypocrisy that in that respect.
Yeah, I'll check it right now.
Mass Effect 1 like was okay.
The exact same thing. Yeah, it was just very average game.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2 was great, and Mass Effect 3 had some great. They had some bits that were really great, like multiplayer for that was just amazing, and the stories and the story arcs and things like that was consistent throughout, and was the nuts and bolts of the game really. And they just refined it, and to not give Mass Effect 1 a chance and never have Mass Effect 2 or 3 is a real shame.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, looking it up now, Killzone on the PlayStation 2 got a 7 out of 10, 70 on Metacritic. Killzone 2 was their highest rated game. It's still their highest rated game, which got a 91. Fair play, but they got a second chance at least to get to that. So they did like the exact same thing as Horizon Zero Dawn, as Days Gone. 7 out of 10. We're given a second chance to get to that 91.
Yeah.
Days Gone 2 could have been a 91. And Killzone 3 was an 84, and then Horizon Zero Dawn was an 89. So like the fact that they just
only an 89.
Yeah, that's sin. That's what I call that. But yeah, the fact that they were allowed to do that, and now the guy that ran that studio is there through them hard times and understands it more than anyone intimately. How much of a struggle that must have been to get to that stage where finally we can, we're showing our weight here.
And he gets promotion, has some power, and these are the decisions that get made.
Yeah, insane. Like, and I get it from like like if you're looking at it on, okay, this year's figures, how much is going out this year and how much we're going to make off The Last of Us Part 1 remake. Like, I get that they're looking at this sort of stuff on a spreadsheet and blah, blah, blah equals the money, at the end. I get it. But like just being completely out of touch, which ultimately I do see this as out of touch. Like this is Sony being out of touch, not realizing how much talent they've got and how much they can nurture this thing to be able to create these amazing studios to make amazing games. And they're just sort of axing all this at the start line because, it doesn't look good for profits over the next couple of years. It's just completely out of touch, in my opinion.
I would agree that last generation, PlayStation, I think won in terms of IP and
hands down, without a doubt,
consumer experience was the best on PlayStation, I would say. And it seems like that is not the case now. It seems like it's flipped real quick, and it just takes a few games to just go this way and a few decisions to happen, and it can affect years down the line because we know this remake's not going to be coming out for a couple of years at least.
Yeah, I mean, this is the weird thing about all of this. Like, they should have learned their lesson off the PlayStation 2. Like, they smashed the PlayStation 2 era out of the park. One of the best-selling consoles of all time. Had a built-in DVD player, all that sort of stuff. Had amazing IP. games sold really well, like game of the year bangers, just year after year after year. Got into the PlayStation 3, arrogance took over. They completely fumbled the launch of the PlayStation 3 because they thought that people were just going to pay hand over fist
Pay
to get this
whatever.
thing. Yeah, and there was just no games really at the beginning, and they really struggled for like a few years. And the only reason why they could turn that around is because they're like, all right, let's leave arrogance at the door. Let's like be a bit more like modest about this and actually look at the consumers, see what they want. Okay, get rid of the PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility. Let's just focus on making PS3 games. Let's focus on like getting PlayStation Plus up and running. Let's focus on getting multiplayer working properly. Let's like all of this stuff like equated out to the point. So by the end of the PlayStation 3 era, when you've got games like Uncharted 2 coming out, because they came out of them struggles, games like The Last of Us Part 1, all of that was because they messed up big time in the beginning of the generation because of their arrogance. And you think they would have learned that lesson, but they clearly haven't, because they've come out the PlayStation 4 era and it's very, very similar to what they did during the PlayStation 2 era. Whereas they're saying, oh, like gamers will just buy this stuff hand over fist. Like it doesn't matter what we do. Like we can charge whatever we want. We can increase the price of our games to $70 instead of $60 now. They'll pay it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I think there might be a bit of a I don't think it'll be nearly as bad as the PS3 era, because they at least got the price right on this one and people are buying the console and it is selling out.
Yeah.
But I think there will be a time when people like yourself haven't bought into the next generation yet. You're going to be looking at the PlayStation 5, looking at the Series X and being like, who's really customer friendly here? You know, like, and there's only really one answer at the moment. It remains to be seen if Sony can pull that out.
And online as well on Twitter, I'm hearing more positive things coming from the Xbox camp with this, with just like people's experience in general. With PlayStation, all I'm hearing is dismay of not being able to get it, or dismay of decisions that are being made. So yeah, it's really interesting at the moment that Xbox seem to be making all the right decisions and Sony seems to be making a lot of bad decisions.
Yeah,
Game Pass is really like, if Sony don't have an answer for that, especially with everything that's been going on recently, they are in a bit of trouble. They're going to be losing some money.
I think so too. I mean, if we don't see someone at E3 for like an answer to Game Pass, whether that's combining PlayStation Plus into PlayStation Now and adding something else, you know, maybe something with backwards compatibility or something, because we've got this huge library of games which they're just ignoring now and just letting be sunsetted into the horizon sort of thing.
Yeah. Again, that doesn't make any sense considering all this hoo-ha around The Last of Us remake. Like, why aren't you putting any effort or energy and, you know, business decisions into the rest of your back catalog? Why is it just your golden eggs that you're making?
Right. We're Sony. We don't like backwards compatibility or old games. But by the way, we're remaking The Last of Us Part 1. It's like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Like, just the balls and the hypocrisy of that is just, it's kind of, it's hard to swallow sometimes as a consumer. But who knows? Like, this stuff might pan out. I mean,
well, E3 is going to be really interesting. This year is
this is the thing.
Huge.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
for me as well, consumer wise, like my decision is probably going to be made this year about what I'm going to be spending my next whack of money on. I might end up buying both consoles if, you know, I'm in this situation that I can do that. I'm nowhere near that at the moment. A lot of people be in the same boat as me. Like, they have to spend money on one, haven't got any yet, and they're still waiting to see what happens. You know, a lot of people are going to be in my boat as well, that wasn't a huge fan of certain elements of The Last of Us 2 and aren't happy about these announcements and are hearing all the stuff on Twitter about the Game Pass of Xbox and how it's a pleasure to play and all this, that, and the other. It's gonna be big.
It's hard. I mean, it's really. I mean,
even if it's dead, like, especially if it's dead, like, announcement wise, that's even bigger, because that means that it's kind of nothing's changed. Like, it's going down Xbox's road, and so
I mean, I mean, Sony have to prove to gamers that they're not just money grabbing, like arrogant, trying to like get any penny out of you that they can. And Xbox are just trying to like keep the momentum going. So it's everyone's to lose, basically. I mean, Xbox have no reason to like stop this momentum that they've got going right now. They're doing really well. Like, they're being consumer friendly, and the reason for that is because they had such a bad generation last generation, and they're reacting to it. And
They
Sony
take
are
it in
doing the opposite.
turns. They're like, this generation, it's your turn.
Every single time.
We'll be
And
the
it's
bad
crazy.
cop
I
this
just don't
year.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's really weird how that constantly happens. But
It
yeah,
is
I mean,
very odd.
we're in this weird season right now where the consoles have just been announced, they've been released, they're out, and it's this first 6 months. Okay, it's just the manufacturers are trying to get the hardware out, and that's it. That's all they're trying to do.
Developers are trying to get their head around this new software
Right.
that they need and how to make things look next gen. Because at the minute,
Exactly.
nothing really looks next gen except what's that game that's just got a few seconds? The guy darting around we talked about, jumping around.
Project Agatha or whatever,
No, it's
the
got a
Square
name.
Enix game.
It's a bloke running around the
Forsaken
forest.
or something. What was it?
Oh, damn.
Something like
Have to
that.
look
Yeah.
it up. But yeah,
Yeah.
that looks next gen.
Right. And there are games like that. I mean, there's Xbox got the same thing with Hellblade 2. Like the thing that I saw from that being all in game was just mind blowing. That was just like, all right, that looks real. Like I want to play that game, you know.
But then Halo comes along
and that Halo comes along, looks like trash. But they delayed it, so they should be able to polish that stuff up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's everyone's to play for during E3.
Really interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting one, and it should be a big one because everyone is trying to show like how big their balls are. Basically, that's the only way to really describe it. And so, like, if you're going to buy a console, like, buy us sort of thing. So
yeah, it's the beginning of a console. It's arguably the biggest one in 7 years. So it's all to play for so many people, and there's all the people that are coming into the console generation now. All the kids, gaming is becoming more and more popular every year, especially with lockdown. It's just, it's just accelerated the stay at home and what we're going to do. I might as well play on games. There's a whole load of people that are just getting into games this year now, and at the moment, the buzz is that Xbox is the way to go. It seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all comes down to Game Pass and the fact that Xbox aren't messing around by buying all of these studios and saying, okay, we've got exclusive content on the way. Even better, we've got this amazing service, which is just you cannot compete with the value of Xbox Game Pass. You just can't. Like it's the best thing that's happened to gaming in the past decade, I would argue. Like, and that's someone that's been out of the Xbox ecosystem for the last generation. Like coming into this thing, like I'm mostly playing my Xbox right now because. And I'm not even buying any games. I just boot up Game Pass every now and then. It's like, oh, we added 10 more games this week. It's like, why do I ever need to buy games? Like, and they've got all these games from like the last 3 generations, and they're all good. Like they never put any bad games on there, really. Yeah. Like it's hard to argue with. And when
you've got a whole generation to go back over and play.
Yeah, and the only thing that PlayStation has really got going right now, like in terms of this first sort of few months, is the Demon's Souls remake, which I played Demon's Souls on PlayStation 3, so I'm really not super interested in that game. So like I can play a remake for $70, or I can play 300 games for $10 a month. Like where is the competition here? There just isn't any yet. So until like you can prove to me at E3, like, hey, here's our answer to Game Pass, or hey, here's the banging games you're going to play this year, then all right, I'm on board. But until then, I'm just like, I've really got no like reason to boot on my PlayStation 5 yet, Yeah. So it's tough. Like they've got a lot to prove, especially on the back of this news with all this sort of stuff happening. It's rough.
Even if Sony come out with a huge, massive, new, amazing IP that looks outstanding, I'm just too cautious now to go full it, like with Cyberpunk and The Last of Us recently this year. I'm never getting on the hype train anytime soon, and I'm not going to be excited. Like Horizon Forbidden West, or whatever it's called, I'm excited about that game, but I'm holding my breath. I'm going to wait until reviews come out, because we're in this world now where a sequel doesn't mean it's going to be a good game, which is weird. And I never thought, like, for us growing up with games our whole lives, that is bizarre.
Yeah, sequels are always better. Like I can't remember the last time a sequel was worse than the original. Because the Last of Us Part 2 was probably the first one in a while where I've been like, ugh,
we used to like the sea change between Sonic and Sonic 2, and then Sonic 2 and Sonic and Knuckles, and the amount of changes and things like that happened. You just think it's a progression. It gets better all the time. There's no way it can get worse. And
Yep.
we're in this position now where arguably the games are getting worse, which is
Yeah, for
just
better or worse, because like of profits or whatever. I mean, the marketing machines behind these games are just so well oiled at this point that you don't know if a game is going to be good or not. Like Cyberpunk
yeah.
had this whole army of marketing.
The
Like they
marketing
had
was
mini
outstanding.
documentaries and like these crazy trailers, and they had like these events where they had half an hour sort of previews for the game itself, and be like, okay, this is like this sort of feature of the game, and we're going to spend half an hour talking about it. We're just going to
I
spend talking about the
watched
guns today.
I watched like the hours of gameplay and
Right.
everything. Super hyped. It looked amazing. It looked
And you're just like, yeah, I'm in.
outstanding.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sold. And then people have been playing the game and they just like, yeah, this is not what was in that market whatsoever. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a fascinating time, like in terms of, like I said, where sequels aren't getting the same sort of love and attention as what the originals are getting for whatever reason, because maybe they're just trying to push them out as fast as they can or whatever. Like we don't know, but it's just that day is gone where we can't rely on a sequel just being good just because it's a sequel.
I think in part it's partly to do with the arms race of technology. Like technology is getting to a point where we can have these amazing experiences, but we're just assuming we can create them on the same budget with the same people in the same amount of time as
Yeah.
the last generation. And for whatever reason, there's been some massive errors in the industry and people are coming unstuck. And it's either going to get worse or it's going to get better. It can't stay the same. You know, money's going to
Yeah.
start talking. My mind has already made up with where my money's going and where it's not going. And I'm not going to be making some decisions that I certainly would have done if Cyberpunk and Last of Us 2 hadn't been released.
Yeah, I mean,
Really interesting.
the whole like, I mean, we talked about this with The Last of Us Part Two, like just the way that game was sort of marketed and the way that the reviews were with the embargoes, like they weren't allowed to talk about certain aspects of the game, which would have probably made my decision on the game a little bit different, like, my purchase on the game a little bit different anyway, I should say.
Mm.
So if they were allowed to talk about the Abby stuff, then I would have been a bit like, do I actually want to play this? Because it doesn't sound like it's my sort of game anymore.
Yeah, if they'd have said this isn't like The Last of Us 1, this is different. It's
mm,
a much more duality type game.
yeah,
So if basically in the marketing they made it clear to me that it wasn't a story driven story arc character piece, uh and that it's much more about conflict of two people, yeah,
yeah,
I wouldn't have been as into it. I probably would have watched more gameplay, to be honest.
for sure. I mean, I am quite religious about the whole fact of I don't pre-order games ever.
No, I
The
never.
Last of Us Part Two, I did pre-order. That was one of the games I did. Like I bought it.
Oh,
I bought it like a year early. I was like, yep, I'm in. Like this is
because you
everything that it
thought,
showed me.
yeah, there's no way it can, yeah,
Can do no wrong. And Naughty
yeah,
Dog were on cloud nine at that point, right?
yeah, upward trajectory, yeah,
Yeah. I learned my lesson just off that, and the
yeah.
fact that I never, ever, ever, and I haven't for years, really, I haven't bought any games pre-ordered in a long time. And that was the one that like probably burnt me the most, even though I rarely ever, like, I can't even imagine for other people, like it goes back to the original conversation we had in like episode one, like vote with your wallets,
Mm.
because it matters. Like this sort of stuff matters. And I didn't buy Cyberpunk, and I'm sure there's like a good chunk of like 5 million people that didn't buy it as well,
Yeah,
based on the
same,
reviews.
same, yeah.
But then there's another 10 million that just like they fell hook, line, and sinker for that stuff, and
Mm.
they were in day one and they were playing just a hot bag of mess. I didn't buy it strictly based on how god awful a condition The Witcher 3 was when I got around to playing it. Like 3-4 years after it was released, it was still pretty buggy. Like
Yeah,
I was hitting crashes and all this sort of stuff, and I was just like, yeah, I'm really not that excited about Cyberpunk anymore.
yeah,
And that
I had
was the
some
game
crashes, yeah.
that was the game that sort of made me think like, is Cyberpunk actually going to be that great? Like and that's the reason why I didn't buy that or pay that much attention to it. And I'm really glad that I didn't, because
Mm.
it kind of panned out that way, which is not to say I was right or anything, but like
Mm.
it's one of those things. Yeah, I was right, but it sucks that I was right. Like I hate the fact that happened.
Yeah,
And it kind of sucks that we're at that point in the games industry now where we have to not only wait for reviews to come out, but also secondary impressions 3 weeks down the line. Because even in the reviews, like The Last of Us Part Two is a great example. Even then, they're not even really allowed to talk about stuff.
it's weird. It kind of draws into question the role that the media play and games media. Because games journalists used to have a pretty good idea on what a game was going to be like when they played it for an hour.
Right.
Now we're in this world where that is not the case anymore. And, you know, ultimately you can enjoy a game or not enjoy a game halfway through the game now. Whereas in the old days, after an hour of getting your hand around the tutorial and the gameplay and the story, and the gameplay loop, you kind of knew where you were.
Yeah.
But now it's completely different. And so we now have to wait until people have finished the game and then do a review, but without giving spoilers away, but giving an idea of the feeling of the game. And it's like their role has to change. And my consumption of media is going to change. I'm not going to listen to reviews that have just played it for half the game anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a fair point as well. I mean, when it's like you said, when we were kids and we would play a demo, it's like, all right, this is what the game is going to be. Like if you played a demo of The Last of Us Part 2, you don't know what the hell you're getting into. Like it's absolutely nothing.
That's a good point. You'd go, this is the best mechanics. This is so fluid. This is amazing. I'm playing as Ellie. Let's go. Here's my money.
And that would not be the experience that you got, because you get halfway through that game, like, who the hell is this girl? You know, like, why the hell am I, you know, like, why am I playing as, you know, the person who I don't like very much for a very good reason. And the game is trying to like make you feel sympathetic towards this person. It's like, I really don't want to go through this like roller coaster of emotion that you're trying to put me through, because like this is not why I picked up this game. This is not what I signed up for.
This wasn't in the marketing at all.
And I get that's the point. I get like, I can hear the fanboys like screaming on top of the mountaintops right now. Like that was the whole point and stuff like that. Like I get it. Like I get what they were trying to do. I just did not enjoy that game whatsoever. Like I just came out the other side of it and just not excited. And if that is the way that Sony want to like push all of their sort of stuff, like going back to the original story, if that's the benchmark for the blockbuster games that they want to make, if The Last of Us Part 2 is that goal, Uncharted, I'm not excited about that.
When the next Uncharted comes out, you've got to be cautious, haven't you? You can't just assume it's going to be a regular run-of-the-mill Uncharted game.
Yeah, I mean, do you seriously think that the next God of War isn't going to have Kratos die in it at this point because of like what's happened in The Last of Us Part 2?
Totally expecting
I would absolutely put money on it.
Yeah.
I would put money. I'll call it right now. Kratos will die.
And you play as the kid. And the kid
I guarantee it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he cries, and then you go through all these crazy emotions, and then you have to like walk through the rain really slowly in the game and stuff. Something is going to happen like that, you know, and it's going to be like, yep, this is The Last of Us influence right here.
Yeah.
And this is what people pay for.
Or he'll be forced to kill his own dad, and his dad will help him put the knife through like he did with the deer in the first interaction with him, or it'll come back.
That sounds too poetic not to be true. You know, like that sounds right.
Yeah. His dad will help him with the knife, or and he'll say,
I mean, I want to play a game because I want to be lost in a world. You know, I want to be entertained, and sometimes it's great when you can do that in something like The Last of Us, where it makes you think as well as be entertained. But when it's just a complete sort of emotional train wreck of a game like The Last of Us Part 2, it's not enjoyable anymore. It's not entertainment. It's a thought piece, which is important in and of itself. Like it's cool that games are going that direction, but as long as Sony don't say that is the goal, that is the golden light now, we have to follow this and do that with every single one of our IPs. Because if that's what they're doing by consolidating all their studios to go into this direction and removing the games that don't hit 7 out of 10, that don't hit those emotional beats, then I'm not sure if I'm on that train ride for that anymore. That's the only thing.
Just old, and this is just what games are now, and we're getting to that stage where we're too old to like
maybe it's just
style of games.
I'm not an angsty teenager, so I don't get like all emotional about like video, like Joel and stuff like in Last of Us Part 2. So like it doesn't hit me as hard, I guess. Like maybe I'm an adult.
We're too old and too cynical, right. And
maybe that's what it is.
Too world weary. That's interesting.
We're just talking out of our ass. That's basically it.
It'd be interesting to see if there are any kids. Well, you'd have to be 18, wouldn't you, to play that game? Any 18-year-olds that I think the same as us in terms of the story, but they wouldn't have had the same connection because they wouldn't have been how old we were when we played The Last of Us 1. So I think our generation definitely had a certain relationship with the two games that's unique because of our age and when it came out.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I often forget about that as well, like how different generations come into this sort of stuff. Like as a developer, I stand back and I look at Fortnite and
Yeah,
like all these free to play games
it's difficult to wrap your
like
head around
Apex Legends.
the
And like I'm just looking at like the Gen Z sort of generation of kids that are coming in
mm,
and playing this sort of stuff. I'm just like, I don't get it. Like
yeah,
am I just old? Like I just do not understand. Like all these kids playing Minecraft and Fortnite and playing Apex Legends and like the new season of COD comes out on Warzone or whatever. And I'm just like, I just this straight off the top of my head, don't get any of
same.
it.
Yeah,
That's just give me an FPS game. I'll play a multiplayer all day. But free
I'm
to play
impre
games like these open world free to play, I just don't get
I'm
it.
impressed, and I'm happy that there's enough
Oh
room
yeah,
for
more
the
power to them.
genres,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm happy they're doing it. But yeah, I agree. I can't empathize with that thought process. Like it
Mm.
doesn't sink in. And I think if I was that old, would I be thinking the same? Is it just the fact that your friends like something that you end up liking something? And it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of like that when Halo 3 was coming out or Call of Duty 4. Like I totally get like there must have been like Atari players that were just like, what the hell are these kids playing these days? You know, like they must have been feeling the same thing. And I totally sympathize with them now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just there's a whole thing. And it's like you said, when you sort of apply that um tidal shift between games and gamers like actually playing these things, like the difference between the Last of Us Part 1 players and the difference between Last of Us Part 2 players, the people that played it at the same time as us, like
Mm.
they going through like the same emotional beats and all this sort of stuff. And it's just, yeah, it's such a weird thing to try and navigate because these games are so far apart in development in terms of just sheer amount of time. Like we're talking 5, 6 years of difference, you know, and that's a whole generation gone
Yeah.
by, which a whole new people come in for that stuff. So
Yes. Well, I guess we will know more when there's more games that come out. And then the generation that just grew up with The Last of Us 2 will have an interesting, fresh look on whatever the new game will be.
yeah.
Um, but
Yeah,
yes.
we'll see. I mean, because it's like you said, all of this is years away. Like all of the effects that like all of the changes and decisions that Sony are making right now of all these, like shutting down studios, consolidating teams, making them co-dev teams, and then giving them their own IP back and all this sort of like destroying motivation and just momentum of stuff like them altering and playing around with all this sort of stuff. We won't see this for years to
Yeah.
come, but in 3, 4 years time when there's suddenly, hey, there's no games out this year, or hey, like this
Mm.
is probably where Days Gone 2 should have come out, or hey, this is why is God of War suddenly like got all emotional and crazy and like it's not an enjoyable game anymore, sort of thing. It's just it's an emotional game, which is a different experience, still worthy of its time and all that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong, but like the shift will change and we'll start feeling that further down the line. So I just hope that day never comes. Maybe this will work out for Sony.
Hope it
Hopefully we just
does.
get more and
Yeah.
more bangers because
A lot can
yeah,
happen in a
we need
few
more
years.
games.
Well,
God,
yeah, that's
yeah.
why
If,
this.
if Ghost of Tsushima comes out, Ghost of Tsushima 2 comes out and everyone dies and it's just sad and depressing, please just warn me beforehand, reviewers. Please just let me know so I don't buy it. I'll just replay Ghost of Tsushima 1. I'll be happy. I will be fine. Just let me know, please. That's all.
So what would happen? So you'd have to be like Genghis Khan halfway through the game and try and kill Jin.
Could you imagine? Like yeah, you just snap and you play as a Chinese invader or something. Yeah, God, I would throw the controller out the window. Like done. Like I would sell my PS5. God, please don't do that, Sucker Punch. I will not be a happy boy. Please don't.
We'll just have to see if it makes money.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, I guess. I mean, maybe we're just old. I don't know. But yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention was that you were right last week. Did you know this?
I was right.
You called something,
Did
and
I?
you were completely right. You nailed it. So after we spoke about MLB The Show 21, not long after
Yes.
that, a couple of days after, there you go. He's
I
already
was
celebrating.
right. Yes,
You
I
were
was
right.
right. Yes.
Correct. You did bring this up. We
Yes.
were discussing, like, asking, is this a step in the door for Sony to sort of say, hey, maybe we can put some games on Game Pass or something, or maybe they're trying to kill the divide and bridge the gap between cross-generational platforms and all this sort of stuff, and doing cross-gen games. And so Sony made games could be on Xbox and vice versa. Maybe it's a whole new generation. We're going into pasture finally. Wrong. And Chris was right, because it was nothing to do with that. It was all to do with the Major League Baseball Association coming out. And well, it was actually Sony that confirmed this, but they were the ones. It was the Major League Baseball Association that forced Sony to put it onto Xbox.
Again,
so
that's
wasn't a Sony decision.
They shouldn't have said that. They should have kept their mouth shut. For the good of everyone, don't advertise that you don't want to work with the competition.
Yeah. Yeah, bad. But I get, at the same time, I can probably understand they were probably getting hammered by people saying, "Hey, when is Ghost of Tsushima coming out on Xbox Series X?"
Yes, exactly.
You know, I can imagine like they were getting hammered by that, so they were probably just trying to nip that in the bud as quick as they can. But yeah, you totally called it.
I am not happy that I'm right about that.
You know what? Do you know how many times I've said that in my life? Like, it hurts when you're right about this sort of stuff. But yeah. You're right.
I also said I hope that they just use the Major League Baseball League Association as a scapegoat to get the ball rolling with it, and it's like, oh, it was Major League Baseball that did this. We're dipping the toe in the water now. Oh, because it was such a success, let's talk. No, they did the exact opposite and said, and was my other theory, which was that it's just a Major League Baseball throwing their weight around saying we want it released on all consoles. So
if you don't, then you'll lose the licensing or whatever. They probably got a threat. I mean, the same thing happened with EA and like the Star Wars brand and stuff. Like they probably got to, because they get given these things for a while and they get to keep them, but sometimes they like don't renew the licenses for whatever reason. That's why you're suddenly seeing a lot of other companies that have gotten the Star Wars brand in the past year that have started announcing games, because like, hey, we get our shot now, because Star Wars as well as all Disney have come out and said, hey, like other companies need to have a shot at this, because while you do great games, EA, like you're not the only one. You're not the only fish in this tank.
Yeah, right. I'm really looking forward to what Star Wars can be in this new console generation with new.
Yeah, I think Ubisoft have got one. Someone else, I can't remember who else has got one. There's a few companies that have come out and said, though. I know that the Division team are working on a Star Wars game at the moment, which is super exciting. Like, I hope, like, if the Division in the Star Wars universe, yes, please, I would play the hell out of that game. So we'll see.
But, yeah, I mean, a Mandalorian video game that just lends itself.
Yeah,
like that sounds like perfect game, because we know, what was it? What was that Star Wars game? The one that got tanked and never happened? Something's just numbers, 1313 or something.
Oh yeah. Project 1313 or whatever. No, I can't remember what it was called.
It was.
Yeah, I know what you talked about though. Like the action adventure game.
Yeah, that looked great. That looked like Uncharted, but Star Wars.
Right.
I would buy that all day. Bit of Star Wars lore in there.
Have you played the the recent Star Wars game? What the hell is it called?
Yes. Little boy Jedi.
Jesus Christ, I can't remember the name of this game, and I really loved it.
We're really gonna get another
Fallen Order. That was it.
Fallen Order. Loved it.
Jedi Fallen Order.
That was great.
Amazing. I think that was my game of the year that year, actually. I remember, like at the time, I said this game has no business being this good. That's what I said.
On paper, I might not have invested in it if I'd been, having to make money bags. I've gone, it's a Star Wars game, hit and miss. There's a huge track record of it not working. It's just running around with a lightsaber, doing some puzzles and fighting some bosses. I don't know, it's a bit old hat now, but they nailed it.
It worked. Totally worked. Yeah, it was like Uncharted meets kind of like Dark Souls bashed together with like some Star Wars like IP sprinkled over it. Yeah, great game.
An idiot like me could complete it and feel like a Jedi, just
right,
swinging his sword around wildly, but still feels awesome.
Yeah, such a great game. And it, like again, like what we were talking about earlier with Horizon Zero Dawn, the way that the sort of progression scales and how the game sort of changes. Like the fact when you get like the double lightsaber, like towards the end. Sorry, spoilers for a game that's been out for 3 years. When you get the double-ended lightsaber, it completely changes the dynamic of the game. It's like, this is amazing. Like it feels fresh again and it feels new.
Yeah. The replayability of some of the levels and the puzzles, was really clever.
That's another game I need to replay. God damn it. I've got so many things I want to play.
Yes,
cool.
Because will it look better on the new Xbox?
Yeah, they've updated it for Xbox Series X anyway. It's updated. I think it's 60 FPS and it's 4K at least. I don't know if they've tweaked anything else inside of there, but yeah, they've definitely given it an upgrade. But
nice.
Yeah, very, very cool.
We've gone off topic quite a fair bit. And we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, I guess so. Is there anything else that you want to mention real quick, or are we good?
I just wanted to mention that I noticed you've been writing a novel.
Have I? Yeah. Oh yeah, I have. That'll never get finished. Don't ever get excited about this. Ever.
Okay. But I just want people out there on the YouTube universe and the Spotify universe that you are writing a novel. So as well as being a gamer, as well as,
this is why I don't like mentioning it, because it comes like really pretentious, like with like the way it's like, oh yes, I'm a concept artist and I'm also writing a novel, sort of thing. Like just that, right. It just sounds fucking ridiculous. So I never make mention of it really. I'm not embarrassed about it or anything. Like I knew you would mention it, but that thing will never get finished. So don't ever be like, where can I pre-order it? It's like, no,
I can see the comments now. Work on your book. You just need some encouragement, everyone. Just put in the comments how much you want to see his novel. Get a draft out there, or if any publishers are listening, then ask him for an advance copy.
Yeah, all 100 of our listeners. Like I'm sure there's a few publishers.
There must be a publisher amongst them.
Yeah, just the one, I guess. But no, I write because I like sometimes when I'm just working on Photoshop stuff and I'm just doing visual stuff all day, like I like to just throw all that stuff aside and be like, okay, words only sort of thing. So it's a good counterbalance to everything. Same reason why I code. Like I'm sure you can understand that. Sometimes you just don't want to be looking at how stuff looks. You just want to look at text. So
like a palette cleanser. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way of describing it. That's why the book's never going to be finished, because I write like 3 lines. I'm like, yeah, that's all right for today. And I walk away from it. I'm like 6 chapters in. So that's as far as it's gotten so far.
Short story though, that's, nearly there.
It's not a short story though. I've got it planned out and it's going to be like 50 chapters. So it's never going to get finished. When I'm 90, it'll get released. And everyone will be like, wow, this is great. You should have finished this years ago. Like, yeah, but I'm dead now. So it's okay.
There's people that have probably stumbled along this in the future in like 2050.
Yeah. Oh, snap. He was working on it back
look
then.
It up. He's that guy. He wrote that book. Oh my God. What are the chances?
Could you imagine? That'll be hilarious. But the same thing for you though. It's like, oh yeah, the guy that like set up that multi-million-dollar like games company after he finished that, I don't know, that indie game about emotion, or grief, whatever it was.
A really depressing game that everyone loved.
I know, like after all the shit that we give the Last of Us Part 2, like, how dare you?
We can't. All that being said, we are terrible at producing stuff as well. So yeah.
Indeed, it's all good.
But we don't have to. We don't have employees to try and make.
This is true. That is the difference. Like if we make something terrible, it's all on us, which is fair. Especially this podcast that we're currently working on right now.
Yeah, at the moment we've got a problem with timing. Because it kind of drags on a bit. Indeed. And goes off topic. Yeah. So yeah, apologies about that.
Yeah, we're trying to stop. Okay, we'll stop. We're actually going to stop this. If you did enjoy this episode, then make sure you comment, subscribe, like, and ring the bell icon notification thing. So
click the bell.
Click the bell so you know when we actually post a new episode. We're only 4 episodes in, but we sure as hell will continue because we're having a blast. But if you want to follow Chris, where can they find you? Good stuff.
At Acrylic Pixel, and I think my YouTube channel is Acrylic Pixel.
Cool. And you can find me on Twitter. I am at Hillfolk Games. I'm also on ArtStation. You can find me at, no, not at, it's just ArtStation/Vin Hill Art. You can find me on there if you're interested in concept art. But you should probably follow both of us on Twitter because we're both working on indie projects at the moment, which if you're interested in any games development stuff, then you can follow us on there. But if not, then you can just subscribe on here and listen to us. We're also on Spotify, I think. And anywhere
Anchor,
else?
Apple Music, and there are a few more platforms that I can't remember that are all part of that get released off of the back of Anchor. So
sweet. Okay. Yeah. So if you're into podcasts, then you can probably find us on whatever service that you probably use. So, and if you can't, then always come back to YouTube where you can look at our ridiculous faces.
Our lovely pale faces.
Yes, which sometimes have beards and then other times don't. And they're always pale and they're always white. And we apologize for that, but that is the way of the world. Until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
She just threw it at me.